They fired me on Friday, the 3 in the afternoon, right before closing, so I couldn't call anyone, consult with anyone. So I could just pack my things and leave, like a dog being thrown out into the street. Do you know what my boss said in front of everyone? He didn't call me into his office. He didn't do it quietly and like a human being. He stood in the middle of an open space where 40 people were sitting and said loudly, so everyone could hear, "Victoria, you're too old for this position. We need young, ambitious people with sparkling eyes. And you're already burnt out. Take your employment record and make room." I looked at him and couldn't believe my ears. I was 42, not 62, not 72, 42. I came to this company 20 years ago, when he was just opening his small office with 3 employees. I was the first accountant, the first manager, the first of everything. I built this firm. I knew all the clients by name. I remembered their children's birthdays. I worked weekends, holidays, vacations when someone was sick. And now I was burned out. My colleagues were silent. No one stood up for me. No one said, "This isn't fair." They simply looked down and pretended to be very busy with their monitors. I looked at them, at those I had trained, helped, pulled out of their own holes. Not a single glance. I slowly stood up and gathered my things. A framed photo of my daughter. A mug with the inscription, "Best Accountant," that clients had given me. A small cactus on the windowsill. It all fit into one bag. 20 years of work in one bag. I walked past his desk. He didn't even look up. And he said one last thing without looking at me. "Security will escort you to the exit, so you don't forget anything." We didn't forget. He was afraid I would steal documents. Or break something. He didn't know me. Never had. I went outside. It was March, dirty, cold, slushy. I got in the car and just sat there, looking at the office door. The light was on inside. Someone was laughing. They were probably celebrating my dismissal. I didn't cry. I couldn't cry at all. There was emptiness inside. It was as if the core that held everything together had been removed from me. I'd worked for this company my entire adult life. Started at 22, right after university. First as a simple clerk, then as a senior manager, then as a department head. I knew this company better than my own apartment. And now they'd thrown me out like a useless component. Because I was burned out. At home, I told my daughter I was going on vacation. She was 15, not stupid, but she pretended to believe me. She didn't want to upset me. My husband, he kept silent. He said, "Rest. You'll find something later." But I saw fear in his eyes. How were we going to pay the mortgage? Our daughter's tuition? The car? My salary was the main one. His was half that. I was sitting in the kitchen at night, drinking iced tea and staring at the wall. And suddenly it washed over me. Not anger. Not resentment. Something else. Cold, clear like ice. I realized I wouldn't file a lawsuit. I wouldn't go to the journalists. I wouldn't file complaints with the labor inspectorate. It was all pointless. He'd hire lawyers, drag it out, and I'd waste my nerves and money. No, I'd do it differently. I'd make him come to me on his knees. The first 2 weeks I just rested. I slept until 10, walked the dog, read books. For the first time in 20 years. And then I took action. I registered my own company, Victoria Consulting LLC. Small, no frills. I didn't want an office. I rented a room in a co-working space for $10,000 a month. A desk, a chair, a laptop, a phone. Everything. Then I opened the list of clients I'd been managing all these years. I remembered them all. Contacts, birthdays, problems, habits. I wasn't going to steal them. I was going to offer them the best. Lower prices, more flexible terms, personal attention. Where my former boss cut corners, I decided to invest. I stayed up nights crunching numbers. I wrote each client a letter. Not a sales pitch. Personal. "Hello, Ivan Petrovich. This is Vika. You've known me for 20 years. I no longer work for my old company. I have my own company now. If you'd like, let's try working together. The first month is free. No obligations." 3 out of 10 responded. 3. I almost gave up. But then I remembered his face when he fired me in front of everyone. And I continued. The first month was hell. I worked 16 hours. In the morning, sorting through paperwork. In the afternoon, meetings with clients. In the evening, reports. And at night, searching for new orders. I lost 8 kilograms. Dark circles appeared under my eyes. My husband started grumbling that I was crazy. My daughter said, "Mom, you're killing yourself." But I couldn't stop, because a fire burned inside. The same fire he said was extinguished. Turned out he just didn't know how to notice it. Within 3 months, I already had 7 regular clients. Not just from my old company, but new ones as well. Word of mouth was working great. People were saying, "Vika is a professional. She actually solves problems, not just shuffles papers." Meanwhile, my former boss was losing clients one after another. I knew this because some of them told me themselves. He raised prices, but the quality dropped. The young managers don't understand anything. We're leaving. I wasn't gloating. I was just doing my job. Sometimes I'd go to his company's website and check the news. They were cutting departments, employees were leaving, profits were falling. Those ambitious young people he'd hired to replace me weren't cutting it. They were good talkers, but they couldn't work. And clients sensed it. 8 months in, I rented my first real office. Small but my own. 2 rooms and a kitchen. I hired 2 assistants, girls who had also once been fired for being too old. One was 45, the other 50. They cried during the interview when I said, "I don't need your years. I need your experience." We became a team. A feminine, fierce, and highly effective team. I named the company Second Youth. It was ironic. Or not. Maybe it was. In my 10th month, something happened that I hadn't planned for but was really looking forward to. The realtor I worked with in offices called me. He said, "Victoria, you know, a building downtown is for sale. Your former boss is renting 3 floors there. The owner wants to sell quickly. The price is good." I thought, maybe you'd be interested. I caught my breath. The building, the very one, where I was fired, where I worked for 20 years, where 40 pairs of downcast eyes looked at me. I asked the price. It was high, higher than I had in my account, but not so high that I couldn't give it a try. I took out a bank loan, put up mortgage on the apartment. My husband was shocked, but he signed it, and borrowed from my parents, friends, anyone I could. I scraped together the money in 3 weeks, and bought this building. 6 stories in the city center, with parking, reception, elevators, and 3 floors that my former boss had rented. I didn't tell him. I just waited for his lease to expire. In 2 months, he was supposed to sign a new one, for 10 years as usual. I asked the realtor not to reveal the new owner's name until the last minute. The realtor agreed. He was an old friend. And then the day of the signing arrived. I put on a formal suit, the one I wore to job interviews when I was younger, black with a white blouse. I put on heels and put on makeup. My daughter said, "Mom, you're beautiful." I smiled. Today is an important day. I arrived at the building an hour before the meeting. I walked through the halls. Everything was the same as 10 months ago. The same walls, the same smell of coffee, the same lamps. Only the faces were different. Young, scared, running around with papers and not knowing what to do. I went into my old office. There sat a guy about 25 years old with headphones on, no jacket. I said, "Excuse me, can I have a minute?" He stared at me, not recognizing me. Of course he didn't. He probably came after I left. I left and went up to the 6th floor, where the new owner's office was my office. I sat down in a chair and waited. At exactly 4 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. My former boss walked in, Alexander Borisovich, in his expensive suit, carrying a crocodile skin briefcase. He looked up, saw me, and froze. I'll never forget his face. First, bewilderment, then recognition, then shock. He opened his mouth, but couldn't utter a sound. I smiled, the calmest smile I could muster. "Hello, Alexander Borisovich. Please sit down. We have something to talk about." He sat down, slowly, as if his legs had given out. He asked, almost in a whisper, "Did you buy the building?" I nodded. "Yes, it's me. The same old, burnt-out woman you fired 10 months ago. Remember? I came to collect my employment record and vacate the space." He turned white. I continued, "Don't worry. I'm not going to kick you out tomorrow. We have a lease that expires in a month. I'm willing to renew it under new terms." He swallowed. "What kind?" I placed the paper in front of him. "The rent is going up 50%. That's market value. I checked. You can refuse, but then you'll have to find a new building and move your office within a month. Good luck. There's nothing vacant downtown. I checked too. He looked at the numbers and didn't believe it. Is this revenge? I shook my head.
No, Alexander Borisovich.
This is business. What you didn't teach me because you thought I was too old. But it turns out I can do it. And even better than you. He signed the contract. For 10 years. With the new rent. I felt no malice. I felt a cold emptiness where the pain had been. He stood up, about to leave, but I stopped him. You know what's most offensive? I didn't want your building. I didn't want your money. I just wanted you to know. I'm not burned out. I'm still burning. And you're burned out. You faded the moment you decided that people are expendable. That youth is more important than experience. That loyalty is worthless. You were wrong. I hope you remember this day. Every time you look out your office window, remember that the walls that surround you belong to that same old woman you kicked out into the street. He was silent. Then he left without saying goodbye. I was left alone in the office. I watched the sunset outside the window, and for the first time in 10 months, I allowed myself to cry. 2 years have passed. My company has grown. We now have 20 employees, and the youngest is 38. I don't hire fresh graduates. I hire those who were fired for age. I hire those who know what it's like to start from scratch. We are the best in our business. Clients come to us because they know we solve problems, not just pretend to work. Alexander Borisovich still rents 3 floors in my building. He tried to move out, but he couldn't find anything suitable. Now he pays me twice as much as he paid the old owner. His company is barely afloat. The young managers he hired to replace me have all left. He hired older ones, but he can't restore his reputation. Word of mouth works both ways. Sometimes I stop by his office. Not to check, not to humiliate. Just to remind myself where I came from. I pass by his office and see him sitting at his desk, aged, tired, with red eyes. And I don't feel pity. I feel peace. Because I did everything right. I didn't stoop to his level. I didn't yell, demand, or complain. I just worked. And one day, life put everything back in its place. I don't believe in karma in the mystical sense. I believe in cause and effect. If you treat people like trash, one day you'll end up in the landfill. If you help, even when it hurts, you will grow. I grew up. I bought a building. I bought a new apartment better than the one I had. I sent my daughter to study abroad. And he stayed where he was, in his little world, where the one with the most power is right. Only the power is gone. And the world remains. Recently, a woman came to me for an interview, 53 years old. She was fired from the bank because the format wasn't right. She cried as she told me. She said, "Nobody needs me anymore." I took her hand and said, "I need you. We need you. In my company, people don't stop at 40. They start over." She's been working for me for 6 months now. The best specialist in the department. I look at her and see myself 10 years ago. Only I didn't let myself get broken. And she won't let me. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear other stories about ordinary people overcoming injustice. I have a story about a supermarket cashier who won a lawsuit against a chain store that fired her for being overweight. And another one about a nurse who became the owner of a private clinic, overtaking her former boss, who called her a dummy. Like it if you also believe that age is not a death sentence but an advantage. And write in the comments, what would you do in my shoes? Would you throw him out of the building or keep him? I'll read everything. Promise. Bye.